Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi there, everybody. Okay, let's get right into it here. A number of different things to bring up. First of all, I want to mention a couple of stories again that are jab related here, just right off the top. I want to mention a few points from the most recent 5 Docs episode 2, where Dr. Lee Merritt was talking with Dr. Polevsky. And a lot of great points were brought up throughout, I thought. It was about an hour and a half long, but instead of just playing a bunch of audio clips from it, I just took some notes and figured I'd share those with you. Again, a lot of great points mentioned, without a doubt. I want to get into this story here. This is rather odd as well. There was a juvenile detention center here in Ohio that apparently released fentanyl through the air vents. And I'm going to read through that. And it ended up injuring at least 7 people, hospitalizing them. So I'll get to that as well. And then just a few words about the current Supreme Court nominee and a couple of other things that are news-related that I think are going along with it, which is really disturbing. And then I just want to read one page from a book I'm reading here by Dr. Joost Meerloo, who, of course, I've mentioned numerous times in the past. I've read 2 of his books already. This is the 3rd one that I just started the other day, and it's titled That Difficult Peace. And it really is good. I mean, I have a hard time putting his books down. I find them that interesting and remarkably relevant to what's going on today. And, of course, these books were written back, in the mid-1900s. So, okay, here we go. First of all, in Louisville, Kentucky, a Dr. Sarah Beth Hartledge has passed away, 36 years old, and triple jabbed. Shouldn't shock anybody at this point, but this particular post says this, and this comes from Getter. So my apologies, I'm not on Getter, will never be, but this is where I got the little post from. It says, Dr. Sarah Beth Hartledge, 36 years old, Louisville, Kentucky doctor and leader of COVID vaccine distribution, has died unexpectedly. Her Twitter feed was full of reposts from top COVID grifters, con artists, and frauds, including Alberta's major COVID huckster, U of A law professor Timothy Caulfield. She mocked and ridiculed ivermectin. She posted endless misinformation on COVID. She minimized vaccine effects on fertility and menstrual cycles and pushed fraudulent unvaxxed hospital numbers. She was 100% a believer in COVID propaganda, lies, and fraud, and she was fully vaccinated and boosted. Sadly, she never woke up. And there you go. Of course, they've probably chalked up her death to COVID complications, as we all know, because of the massive word manipulation that's used with regularity. So, again, it's awful nonetheless. And I know that sort of, twisting the proverbial knife or dancing on the grave is something that a lot of people do. But, I try not to take that approach as best I can. It's pretty evident, again, for those of us that are knowledgeable as to what's going on, that when this happens, it comes as no shock to us. It comes as a shock, of course, to the individual, until, of course, they pass away and have the clarity of their passing on in the next life. They can clearly see what they've done to themselves, as I'm sure we all can. But, this kind of thing is just, it's awful nonetheless. But even so, the very individuals, I mean, they apparently have no concept of karma being a thing, or just cosmic justice, or whatever you want to call it. Just the constantly making fun of the individuals who have chosen to not put drugs into their body, that they are the problem. That is that's a complete absence of thought, an individual right that is disturbing within individuals. And again, this is an alleged doctor of some kind. I don't know if, again, they're a medical doctor, or if they're an administrative doctor, or what exactly their specific title was behind their letters before or after their name, but in either case, it's clearly not good. It's just more evidence that those that have not been jabbed are on the right side of things, and that's not, that's going to continue to be the case as time goes forward here. Here's the next thing I wanted to read. This comes from Emerald Robinson's Substack, titled "The Right Way," and this particular article from about a day ago is titled "The DOJ is hiring tort lawyers to defend Health and Human Services from vaccine injury cases." So this is a thing, and this is ramping up apparently. It's a rather short article, so I'll give it a read here. It says, quote, "The Biden regime's DOJ apparently needs to hire at least 4 new tort lawyers to help with vaccine injury cases against HHS, according to a new job posting on the federal government's official hiring site, USA Jobs. The job posting is only open for a month, so they need them now." I'm wondering whether or not this isn't, I'm going to keep reading, but I'm wondering whether or not this isn't, a little white hat operation to help wake people up. Because it's clear as day on their website. And as Emerald Robinson points out, here's the actual job description. It says, let's see. Oh, the italics are her own writing. So she says, quote, or the job description says, quote, "Trial attorneys in Office of Constitutional and Specialized Tort Litigation, vaccine litigation staff represent the interests of the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services in all cases filed in the United States Court of Federal Claims under the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, Vaccine Act. The position offers a unique experience in public service and involves trial practice. The legal and medical issues at stake in each case vary. Trial attorneys independently manage heavy caseloads, and while streamlined procedures are utilized, many cases involve complex scientific issues of causation that require employment of experts in medical fields such as pediatrics, neurology, immunology, and epidemiology. In cases in which petitioners are found entitled to compensation, the litigation often requires retention and management of experts to develop an appropriate life care plan for the injured party, to include medical treatment, remedial care, rehabilitation, calculation of lost earnings, actuary projections, and structured settlements." It says attorneys appear frequently before the Office of Special Masters in the United States Court of Federal Claims and also appear before the judges of the court as well as the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit when handling appeals. It then says responsibilities include factual and legal research, medical record reviews, brief writing, and working with expert witnesses to develop the defense of claims, as well as to address the life care needs of vaccine-injured petitioners. Attorneys also engage regularly in settlement negotiations, including alternative dispute resolution and drafting settlement memoranda and related documents. And then she wrote, due to a recent increase in the cases filed under the Vaccine Act, the office is expanding to address the additional workload. And then she finishes up by saying this. She says, quote, "Notice that the candidates will need top secret security clearances to do their jobs. Now, why would you need a top secret clearance to do vaccine injury settlements? My guess, the Biden regime will try to hide the roles of Dr. Fauci and Dr. Barrick and DARPA, Moderna, and the rest of them at the Pentagon and NIH in creating COVID-19 by designing the obvious truth as classified information. It's all bioweapons research, after all. That's exactly how the U.S. government works," unquote. I agree. That's certainly a serious take. It could be, this entire job posting could be here, for the sole purpose of burying the truth, to simply distract people and say, well, here are some people that have been injured or were misled or what have you. And again, they could even be doctors suing, but who's really to know at this point? I think it's I think it's going to be interesting just going forward. It's certainly a unique thing that would pop up on the USA Jobs Board, and that the Health and Human Services is all of the sudden, 1 year plus into this bioweapon rollout, they're now looking for attorneys. And again, it could just be a distraction play, or it could be legitimate, or it could just be a, hey, look over here. We've got the bad guys right where we want them. Make this a news-related thing, and then people will, more eyes will be on it, and people will start to pay attention that these shots aren't helping anybody, and that they are in fact hurting on purpose. So that could be part of the motive as well. Who's to really know? Okay, a couple of, well, actually 3 particular posts that I want to read here of varying degrees and severity, but sort of all in the same vein again when it comes to the jab. One of the things that, of course, occurs a lot on these anonymous chat boards are people sort of spilling their guts as to what they're experiencing. Again, whether it be interpersonal conflict with their job or their family, or actually the health effects that that they personally have suffered as a result. So here's this first one that I want to read, and all 3 of these come from greatawakening.win, which again, I highly recommend people check that website out on a day in and day out basis, because it really is a extension of a chat forum and news forum built by anonymous Americans and researchers and XYZ who are getting down to brass tacks and getting down to the truth. But it's an extension from Vote, VOAT, which was an old chat board a number of years back as well, that was at the forefront and frankly the absolute tip of the spear as far as I was concerned. I was a poster on Vote on a regular basis, and a reader of Vote, and I miss Vote. I miss Vote greatly. But greatawakening.win is very, very good. So here's a post, and it's titled, "Vaccine Addict Gets Sicker Than They've Been in Over 6 Years, Can't Seem to Put 2 and 2 Together, that the constant vaccine mask usage has reduced," and they said ZERS, XER apostrophe S, immune system to rubble. So there, and then of course it's a screenshot from what looks like a Reddit post, if I had to take a guess. And it is a Reddit post, which is telling sometimes too. It says, quote, "So I'm really sick. It's been coming on since Friday, but peaked yesterday with me losing my sense of smell and taste. I've gotten 2 negative rapid at-home tests," which of course are inaccurate, and purposefully so, and poisonous, I might add, "Saturday and yesterday. And no fever or sore throat, but I've got a PCR scheduled for this morning." My God. Along with a visit to urgent care, because I haven't been this sick in probably 6+ years. As I'm effing miserable, I wear a KN95 at work and don't go anywhere outside of the office, but went maskless 3 meetings this week because of audio issues. I was the speaker at all 3, no mask mandates, so I couldn't ask for everyone else to be masked. Stupid, 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 stupid. Okay, so I'm not done reading this, but again, they're testing themselves now into sickness. Yes, they're jabbed. We get that. They're a mask wearer. We get that. They think the masks work. They don't. They think the tests are accurate. They don't. They think that the jabs work. They don't. And yet they're saying the word stupid 4 times because they think that the other people in the room who weren't wearing masks because there wasn't a mandate in place, which again means that they think that the masks do something as a preventative measure. It's just sad. The brainwashing is so sad. They continued and said, quote, "Even if this isn't COVID, I seriously never want to be sick again. I'm wearing a mask in group settings for the rest of my life." And then it says, "ETA, thank you for all the kind words. I went to an urgent care appointment after my PCR test, and they also tested me for COVID and flu. I was positive for flu, exclamation point. I was so surprised, thrown off, but glad to have an answer and be negative for COVID. I did get a flu shot, so hopefully my symptoms aren't too bad." unquote. They're poisoning themselves to death. That's all they're doing. They're poisoning themselves to death. The tests are poison. The shots are poison. The mask wearing is poison. You're inhaling all of your carbon dioxide. Again, it's poison. The person has no idea that they're poisoning themselves constantly. I gotta tell you, I mean, it's heartbreaking. But again, at that level of decision making, as I've brought up previously, that kind of decision making and that kind of mindset is so dangerous. It's just so dangerous that even to be around that person would be putting your life in danger. Again, whether they drive too fast or don't wear a seatbelt, or they wear 5 seatbelts and the car crashes, and then the car's on fire, but they can't get out of the car because there's 5 seatbelts wrapped around them. I mean, the hypochondria that has risen to the surface here is so alarming. It really, really is. Here's another post. Again, same website. It says, I think I just witnessed Vax AIDS. This is also remarkably sad. It says, quote, I've posted a few things about this in the past month or two. My grandma is going downhill quickly. Healthy as an ox a few months ago. The only thing that has changed is 3 COVID shots. Well, she felt odd and drove herself to the hospital. She hasn't left various forms of medical care since. I don't know what that means. It then says, needless to say, rapid onset lymphoma. Both kidneys simultaneously failing and stage 4 gastrocolonal cancer in one of her intestines. I go and visit today pretty much to say goodbye and see her for the first time she has been in, and the last time I will most likely see her. She looks like a literal zombie version of her barely recognizable. Skin hanging off of her bones, frail, black and blue all over, sunken eyes. On so much drugs, she can barely function. Room is 90 degrees plus Fahrenheit, and they're barely giving her liquids while she's under blankets. It says, this woman cooked Christmas dinner just fine this year. I don't know, I'm fine. I just didn't really see the zombie version of my grandma. My grandfather had numerous strokes and didn't look half as bad as she did when he went. Don't take the effing Vax AIDS. Unquote. Yeah. This has been going on, ladies and gentlemen, again, for over a year. You know, the immediate reactions. I'll never forget those immediate reaction videos that were all over BitChute on a regular basis, and the nurses with the neurological damage. And again, on the 5 Docs program on the Critically Thinking channel on Rumble, Dr. Merritt and Dr. Pilevsky bring it up specifically yet again, and they're 100% right. You know, we have first responders and military that have taken these shots. Not so in some other countries. In some other countries, it was not mandatory. It was not mandated. They insisted that their militaries not take it. And then, of course, there were other countries that were insisting that everybody take it. And yes, the closer you are, the more vulnerable you are to quote-unquote COVID-19. Make sure that you receive your vaccination. I'm going to get into that in just a minute, but here's the last post from Great Awakening. And this, again, is, I think, indicative of what's going on in a lot of families, in particular when you have some that are awake and some that know what's going on, and then you have others that do not. This one is titled, I Snapped Last Night, I'm Sad to Say. This individual says, quote, months ago, when the whole jab thing started, my mother and father-in-law were determined to get it because TV told them so. I advised them not to, and that they were going to damage themselves multiple times. I even told them about how I ended paralyzed for a month as a kid when I received vaccine back then. Nothing. They went and did it 3 times. So after that, I basically told them I don't want to talk about it anymore. Now my father-in-law, months later, as expected, got a serious pneumonia, lost the ability to walk or even sit in bed, lost control of his bowel movements and ability to talk. So we are taking care of him the best we could, trying not to lose our minds in the process. Showing up with a smile, trying to make their life easier, paying for bills, paying for medication, paying for diapers and food, clipping his toenails, cutting off his hair and beard, and changing diapers. So on top of all of that, wife and I were politely asked last night to respect my brother-in-law more, since he feels that a lot is depending on him, quote unquote. Same brother-in-law who was organizing excursions with the rest of the family to go for a group testing to see what might be wrong with them. The same guy who cannot lift a bed mattress without having two people help him, while wife and I are the ones carrying his immobilized father around. Same guys who can buy both wife and me with his salary, but is paying way less for their bad decisions. And the first thing he came to us with was, quote, "How are we going to divide the expenses?" Unquote. He then said, "So I snapped and I yelled my lungs off. So my brother-in-law, hypochondriac ass, was insisting on them getting jabbed. They did it, and we were stoically dealing with the damage made because they are our parents. And I am accused that I am not respecting him enough because by not being knowledgeable in the ins and outs of hospitals and doctors and procedures and not getting the ideas first about where to drag the patient next. I'm not proud of myself, my friends. I did not have a I told you so moment at any point there, but I think that even the neighbors in the next building heard about the boundaries, that they will never be allowed to effing cross with me." And then he says in the last line, "The messed up thing is that I feel like a piece of shit now for allowing myself to go full dark mode," unquote. I have to tell you, this person, of course, is not alone. This has been going on in a number of different families. AJ Gochik, as I've mentioned in the past, he's had family members, I believe, become sick, certainly friends, become sick and even die. And some of them, again, were strong advocates for it and encouraging their entire families to go out and get these shots. You know, this is the part of all of this that the real cognitive dissonance is occurring with the individuals that were encouraging people to do this. And now they're seeing the ill effects among their friends and family, and they still can't see it. They still can't see nor remember that it was they who were encouraging people to do this. And that, you know, they certainly bear some of that responsibility. In particular, I might add, among the younger generation toward the older generation. I mean, I too know of a number of individuals, one in particular who just came to mind, a former school board member in the town where I live. She was remarkably sick, coughing up a lung constantly, wearing a mask all the time, taking the mask off to drink some water, and then put the mask back on only to cough more. Apparently, her daughter is either a nurse or a doctor in a hospital in the Cincinnati area. And again, very publicly, she would bring this up in school board meetings, and she would say, "Well, my daughter just says it's terrible, and the patients that she's seeing there's just so many of them, and I think we just need to do our best, and people can do what they want, but I encourage people to get the shots and blah, blah, blah." I mean, this is an older woman. This is an older woman who, again, has received the shots herself and does not know that she is ill, if not dying, as a result now. So, again, even when their family members are in the quote-unquote medical profession, they are, instead of thinking for themselves as individuals, they're just hinging their entire life on the word of a family member when it comes to injecting themselves, which again, as I've written about and stated before, I might add, the people that have taken these can't name a single ingredient. Not one. That matters. I mean, that's a basic quiz game. Pop quiz, everybody, for all you jabbed. What exactly did you inject yourselves with? The first thing that they'll say is messenger RNA. If they even say that, they'll say messenger RNA. And it repairs cells, and it repairs my DNA, and it keeps me from whatever. And then that's it. They don't even know what messenger RNA is, let alone that it's never been injected into a human body ever before, ever. So again, I really do feel bad for these people. I want to make that abundantly clear. I don't know how much sympathy I have for the people that are making fun of the unjabbed. The people that are going, whatever, you're unjabbed. Well, now you're going to die and you're killing other people because you're unjabbed. I don't have any sympathy for that. But at the exact same time, we have to recognize on the spectrum of the matrix and the spectrum of the brainwashing that's taken place throughout our whole lives, those individuals are on the opposite end. I mean, we're all in the same boat to some extent. Not all of us, of course. I mean, I'm not trying to group us all together in that way, but some of us broke free from the matrix, and clearly some of us went in the exact opposite direction toward the 3 jabs, got a mask all the time, or got the jabs because I don't want to wear a mask, those people, and 1,000 other explanations. But my God, the best thing that you can own in your home is a sledgehammer, so that you can put it right through your television and stop watching it. Again, I did my my weekly 5-second experiment with Fox News. It took 5 seconds, and I turned on at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Bret Baier's special report, because I wanted to see, again, right at the top, if there was anything about Hunter Biden's laptop, which, of course, for those of us, again, who know what's going on, that's old news. That's 2020 news. I was looking at those pictures and listening to that audio and being the investigator, so to speak, that I try to be on some of these issues, but that was from 2020. Here we are, 2022, and all of a sudden it's back up again. Not a peep from old Fox News. Not a peep from Bret Baier. Bret Baier. Not a single peep. Top of the hour, his show, apparently. Not a peep. Which means, what else aren't they talking about? They're not talking about ivermectin, are they? They're not talking about cures for anything, are they? They're not talking about any therapeutics, and they haven't been, and they won't, because they are the enemy. They're just the enemy. It really is that simple. So, just to wrap up some of the jab stuff here, I want to go through, again, just a few notes from the Critically Thinking channel and the 5 Docs where Dr. Merritt was on with Dr. Pilevsky. They both agreed. Well, first of all, I'll mention this. Excuse me. Is rather interesting, I thought. The more and more stories that they tell, the more personal stories that they tell of people that they observe and the things that they experience and the hand sanitizing that people try to get them to do and whatever else, wherever they are when it's taking place. All of these stories are proving virology to be a lie. Every single story that's brought up, again, whether it be, the spit droplets, the 6 feet of distancing, all of that made up garbage, which again, they all said is just completely made up. All of it was just made up out of thin air. I mean, it's a satanic ritual. I've been over that. That's why it's 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, 666. It has nothing to do with viruses actually existing, let alone traveling in spit or mouth particles or water droplets or whatever, and then traveling through the air and then somehow making its way into your body. It doesn't work that way. Poison exists outside of the body, and the only way that you put poison in your body is you breathe it in, you orally ingest it, or you inject it directly into your bloodstream. Or, of course, you rub it into your skin in some vigorous fashion. That's it. So one of the interesting things is that in these stories, and I know that Dr. Merritt is really at the forefront um, of a lot of things. And again, I mentioned this last summer when I came back from the second annual White Coat Summit with America's Frontline Doctors. It was evident to me that Dr. Merritt was ahead of the curve, not just on the medical aspect of all of this, but the geopolitical aspect of all of this, the chemtrail aspect of all of this, the nanoparticles and graphene oxide and all of it. It really is her, and I mean it's becoming all of them, of course. But her and Dr. Madej, same thing, very ahead of the curve. And they're continuously catching up, and I'm glad that they're continuing to do what they're doing because they're keeping people informed. Again, we cannot rely on television, any human on TV to actually tell anybody the truth. We have to find it. And again, that's just one of the many things that I try to do here on this podcast is just watch a variety of different things, take notes, bring in some audio clips from time to time if I can, and then share them with you because again, I know that not everybody has the time in the day to do the particular things that I'm doing right now. And if I can, again, help in that process, all the better. So they continued to bring up um, how, and this is huge, that they have no doubt in their minds, nor do I, and I agree with them, that they are, and by they I mean the medical industry for the most part, is continuously working to make these bioweapon shots available to infants right out of the womb. They would have to release the emergency use authorization. One of these shots would ultimately have to be FDA approved. Ladies and gentlemen, if it receives full FDA approval, it won't just be infants that receive them, it will be K-12 schools and universities that require them. The moment that that domino falls, other dominoes will fall. And that's not good, clearly. Yeah. So they both were in agreement on that. Uh, let's see. I mentioned that, blah, blah, blah. They also mentioned, of course, the military aspect of all of this and the first responders, as I briefly said earlier. You know, they consistently brought that up, that those are the individuals throughout this entire time that were some of the first to blindly take these shots and blindly just, again, walk right into this without really thinking. Because, again, that line of work can brainwash individuals into believing that whatever whatever they all say goes, and whatever their administrators tell them they have to do, and well, it was in a memo and an email from higher ups, so we have to do this. Uh, I've I really don't know what to say. It's a personal characteristic of an individual who either is susceptible to peer pressure or a person who is not susceptible to peer pressure, regardless of what the consequences may or may not be. Again, job loss, getting kicked out of an institution, a school, whatever it may be. The people that have pushed back their entire life and had the characteristic within themselves to not just fall for things blindly. Those are the people that are probably, again, the vast majority, I would assume, are still walking around unjabbed and not regretting it every single day that passes. So they mentioned again the national security aspect of what's going to happen now with all of these first responders who have taken these shots and the alleged life expectancy that has been predicted among individuals who show AIDS-like symptoms as a result of, again, having vaccine-induced AIDS. So there is that. They also mentioned this, which is very relevant, and it sort of leads into something I'm going to mention a little bit later regarding the current Supreme Court nominee, but they talked about the behavioral aspect of minors, in particular boys. And the business of pacifying the brain with electronics and video games and iPads and computers and all of this. It can seriously create detrimental, I should say, frontal lobe development, which is where we house our cognitive ability, our critical thinking, you name it, decision making, whatever. If all of that is pacified in youth, what kind of an adult is going to be created, assuming that they are old and that they reach adult age, that they survive long enough to become an actual adult? That's it's awful. It's just awful, and it does not help that these kinds of behaviors have been really ramping up heavily, I might add, since the early 2000s in American schools and K-12 schools. Too much game playing, not enough thinking. Too much staring at screens and not enough building of things. You in order to build something, you have to be now associated with some group or some club that is not actually during school time. So while I've harped hard on on the presence of clubs and outside of school groups and things of that nature, it's highly possible that in some of those clubs and groups, of course, not the Satan groups that exists in some K-12 schools around the nation. Come on down to your local Satan club for kids, after school Satan club, and all that other nonsense, and of course drag queen story time and all that garbage. But it could be again that an old design or an old revisiting of those old clubs and old groups where again, you teach children real skills, real things that they need to know. I mean, look what's happened with Boy Scouts, for God's sakes, over the course of the last few decades. It's become so perverse that it's practically non-existent, if it even exists. I don't even know if it exists anymore. It's just been infiltrated with pedophilia to such an extent that it's a joke now. It's just a complete joke. So they just mentioned that a lot in that particular episode, and they were bringing that up specifically around a story that Dr. Palevsky brought up, where he mentioned one of his friends who is a woman who is married to a woman, and then the two of them have two adopted children. One is a male, one is a female, but they're not allowing the male to play with trucks, and they're not allowing the male to do other stereotypical male things. And but in the exact same breath, they claimed that these two adopted parents allegedly claimed that they were raising their children in a gender neutral home, when clearly that's not the case. They're raising them in a brainwashed family that is simply trying to use children to exercise their own neuroses within themselves, and then abuse that child in the process while making themselves feel better. Child abusers deserve no quarter, in my opinion. I don't care what degree it is. I don't care where they fall on the spectrum. Child abusers deserve no quarter. So it's it was a heartbreaking story that they brought up, but again, they just mentioned the importance of getting outside, doing things outside, out in nature, building things, going for hikes, going for walks, learning about Earth and our surroundings, instead of sitting on our rumps doing nothing and staring at screens. It's remarkably unproductive. It pacifies the brain. It just turns, in particular, a child's brain, but anybody, frankly, it just turns it into mashed potatoes. Just turns your brain into a bowl of mashed potatoes. And it makes them unmotivated, which was the larger argument that he brought up. It makes them, it makes in particular boys less masculine, because they aren't getting hurt physically and then learning how to heal, hitting their thumb with a hammer because they were building something, and then learning that that's part of the process, that you're going to get a splinter, you're going to hurt yourself in the process of building something, because that's what you do. But they just play it safe, or they just don't do things because, again, this malaise just takes over them. So yeah, those were just some of the takeaways I took from the Critically Thinking episode. My understanding is next week's episode is going to be all 5 docs meeting together again. And again, I watch their episodes because I find them fascinating. They come from 5 different areas of medicine, so to speak. And then, of course, they live in separate areas across the United States. And then they meet up on these Zoom calls and they discuss their different backgrounds and what they've currently experienced, and certain stories that they've heard, and things, that have gone on. And I don't know. It was ahead of the curve a year ago. I still think it is now. If it wasn't, believe me, I would be the first to tell you. But it's evident that they are continuously learning, perhaps some more than others, but they're continuously learning and then doing their best to bring that information to us. And I'm grateful for that. Okay. Here's the fentanyl story from Ohio, juvenile detention center. This comes from the Blaze. I'm not, I don't agree with the Blaze on a lot of their stuff, but whatever. It's an interesting story nonetheless, and this is a local matter here for me because, well, I live here. So it says the following. Quote, the title says, fentanyl pumped through air vents at juvenile detention center, hospitalizing at least 7 people, including children. It says at least 7 people, including children, blah, blah, blah. I just said that, at a detention center in Stryker, Ohio. The incident took place at the Northeast Ohio Juvenile Detention Training and Rehabilitation Center around 8:30 p.m. What are the details? It says first responders from the Williams County Sheriff's Department, as well as those from the Stryker Police Department and Bryan Fire Department, responded to a call from the center that evening, reporting that multiple people, including juveniles, were falling unconscious for unknown reasons. Authorities conducted an investigation into the facility and found that fentanyl had been released into the air vents. Of the 7 people hospitalized, 4 were juvenile residents and 3 were wardens. Williams County Sheriff's Department Chief Deputy Jeff Lehman told WTVG-TV that the victims are in stable condition and are expected to recover. The Daily Mail reported that the facility primarily houses juveniles awaiting trial and has a capacity to hold 64 juveniles. It then says the rest of the facility's juvenile residents were transferred to a nearby facility where authorities continued their investigation into the disturbing incident. They will be housed in the neighboring corrections center of the Northwest Ohio and Adult Facility and will be kept isolated until it is safe to return to the Juvenile Detention Center. Authorities did not say how the deadly opioid wound up in the facility's ventilation system. Well, you'd better find that out, don't you think? It then says fentanyl, a synthetic opioid, can be up to 100 times stronger than morphine and 50 times stronger than heroin. According to a recent report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, those reliable people, 105,752 Americans died from drug overdoses in the 12 months leading up to October 2021. The health organization reported that at least 2/3 of those deaths were linked to exposure to synthetic opioids like fentanyl. Well, I bet they were for other reasons too, but there you go. If fentanyl, again, is being snuck into marijuana, cocaine, and other drugs, which we know it is, all the more reason, of course, to stay away. But there's only one way I know, ladies and gentlemen, that it would make its way into a ventilation system. And I'm pretty sure that you know how it got there too. These things don't just happen. Fentanyl didn't just magically make its way into the air vents. Someone put it there. Someone was trying to poison people, etc., etc. So we'll see if there's a follow-up to that story later on. I'll see if I can't look into that a little bit later and see what it produces. Maybe nothing, but time will tell. Okay, switching gears here slightly. In lockstep fashion, it needs to be brought up again that the current Supreme Court nominee, who is now doing their best to again speak to their law career and testify to this, that, and the other in previous decisions that they've made, either as a defense lawyer or what have you, that one of the interesting things that's come up regarding Miss Jackson's previous legal tenure, I'll say, has to do with the rulings given around her leniency regarding sexual predators and convicted sexual predators or individuals who are in possession of child pornography. I'm going to play for you her defense to some of that right now. So give this a listen real quick.
As you said, the guideline was based originally on a statutory scheme and on directives, specific directives by Congress at a time in which more serious child pornography offenders were identified based on the volume, based on the number of photographs that they received in the mail. And that made total sense before, when we didn't have the internet, when we didn't have distribution. But the way that the guideline is now structured, based on that set of circumstances, is leading to extreme disparities in the system because it's so easy for people to get volumes of this kind of material now by computers. So it's not doing the work of differentiating who is a more serious offender in the way that it used to. So the commission has taken that into account, and perhaps even more importantly, courts are adjusting their sentences in order to account for the changed circumstances. But it says nothing about the court's view of the seriousness of this offense.
Okay, so for me, again, not a lawyer, like to play one sometimes on TV just for fun, but I've watched all of these hearings almost in their entirety dating back to Neil Gorsuch. I watched his entire Judiciary Committee hearing in its entirety. I watched Kavanaugh's as well. I watched Amy Coney Barrett's in its entirety. I'm not watching hers in its entirety. I'm catching pieces and parts. There's, as you would expect in a lot of these, in particular when someone's back is against a wall, so to speak, on previous decisions that have been made, there's just this overarching blaming of the system. Well, it's the system is to blame, or new technologies that are catching new people are to blame, and that's created a massive influx. She calls them disparities. Keep in mind, only a leftist uses the word disparity. If in the past, ladies and gentlemen, you caught 10 sexual predators in or around a town, back then that would probably be, I don't know, considered a lot, depending on the population of that town. But just because there are new technologies that are basically honey traps for these kinds of predators does not mean that you give more lenient sentences to those individuals who get caught because there are more of them getting caught. Quite the opposite. If the internet has done anything, it's shined a massive light on predators and predatory behavior because it's given them a playground where they can do what they want to do. I mean, on a constant basis, you have federal authorities trying to ensnare or entrap or whatever all kinds of people in online environments for having discussions with minors or taking pictures or sending pictures or whatever it may be. Just because there are different methods even in catching these people, and you happen to catch them, does not mean that you don't sentence them to the fullest extent of the law because your quote-unquote jail is filling up with people, or you're seeing more of those individuals getting caught because of those increased increases in methods. I think that's the whole point. The law is the law. There are endless laws that exist and sentencing laws that exist for sexual predators. And here's the connection that I want to make also politically as well, because one of the things that, again, happens in all of this, which is really interesting, I think, is anytime this subject comes to the forefront, whether it be, again, in Washington, D.C. or elsewhere, it also ends up coming up through the business aspect of what goes on in America. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the largest, even from its very inception, if you've ever looked up the history of Walt Disney, the man was a pedophile and an alcoholic. So this particular story, which again, it's very long. I'm just going to read sort of the bullet points here, but it comes from the Daily Mail. And it's titled, "Disney to Produce More Gay Content for Kids After Staff Backlash Over Company's Silence Over Don't Say Gay Bill. CEO Bob Chapek attempts to avert staff walkout but faces criticism from parents." So a couple of things. I could go on for days about Disney. If you've never read the book and it's free, you can. I'm telling you right now, it's a life-changing book. It's free on PDF on the internet. In fact, the FBI and even CIA put the book out on their website and Twitter accounts a couple of years back, and the internet just exploded with people going, "Are you serious? They actually tweeted out this book." It's written by Fritz Springmeier, and it's Bloodlines of the Illuminati. That's the name of the book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. I believe the last 40 pages are all about Disney. You have to read this book. I've read every word. It is terrifying. It's terrifying. And there's no way. He's an investigative reporter, by the way, Fritz Springmeier, very well known back in the day. It's incredible. And again, horrific. But the last 40 pages are roughly all about Disney, its inception, its history, the family origin, what they've done there, what they do, all of it. But here are the bullet points from the Daily Mail article. It says, Chapek, the CEO of Disney, told employees during a virtual town hall that he regretted not taking a public stance against Florida's controversial Don't Say Gay bill. That's not what it's called, by the way. It's a Parental Rights Act bill. It then says employees are still planning a walkout Tuesday against Disney's slow response. Yesterday, it says the Florida bill bans the teaching of lessons on sexuality, gender identity, and sexual orientation in a manner that is not age appropriate. Good. It then says on Monday, Chapek announced plans to create a task force in charge of making sure that more LGBT awareness content is available for children. A kiss between two women that was cut from an upcoming Toy Story spin-off has now been reinstated, and parents have taken to social media to criticize the company's woke pandering. Ladies and gentlemen, Disney has allegedly been trafficking children since its inception. They've been brainwashing children, and we all know the Disney logo. That signature, okay, that's not Walt Disney's signature. Again, Walt Disney was a monster, but the signature was created by Satanists. There are three sixes in the Disney signature. The D is a backward 6. The dotted I in the next letter is a 6. You can clearly see it. And the Y at the end of Disney, which doesn't even look like a Y, it looks like a 6. So keep that in mind. Symbolism is something that these individuals have always flaunted. They've flaunted it in front of our faces, and it's designed, again, to brainwash and get people to support, you name it. Whatever hidden cause they want people to support, or public cause they want people to support. My point is that it's not an accident that business, society, politics, that all of that is just woven together with such a fine thread, but it's just crystal clear, at least again for those of us that are awake and can see these connections. So I don't know, in that incoherent rambling that I just engaged in. I hope you picked up on something at least. Here's the last thing I want to do. I want to read now from a book titled That Difficult Peace, and I just want to read the very second page of this because it's beyond relevant. So again, this comes from Dr. Joost Meerloo, and ask yourself whether or not this sounds relevant even today. It says, quote, "Preparedness for peace is a spiritual challenge. People can hide their heads in the sand. They can hide behind useless Maginot lines with fortresses and fleets that protect them only from facing the real problems of the world, emanating from the inner problems of man. This is the challenge of our time. Every war is a dramatization of man's inner war, the externalization of his inner conflicts. Man feels temporarily relieved of tensions when there is outside trouble in the world. He can postpone finding a solution to his own conflicts as long as the outside world offers him a more stirring emotional drama in which he can play a role. Yet it is very expensive production that man stages in order to periodically to relax his tensions. It is as if the world needed the great excitement and insanity of war in order to relieve itself temporarily of personal madness. Statistical figures show that during war, the number of neuropsychosis decreases. Man pays for this latter with new fears and feelings of insecurity. After the war, his neuroses breaks out in greater frequency. He only postpones his neuroses in order to experience more immediately the drama of war. Modern psychology teaches us that other ways besides war exist of revealing man's inner tensions and aggressions. But the first step is to face these problems, to recognize them for what they are, and to be aware of man's urge for self-destruction revealing itself in the ritualized convulsions of war." Unquote. You know, I've read so much of Dr. Meerloo's work in his books now that it could be that I'm even, that he's repeating himself with regularity, and if so, that's fine with me. I really enjoy his writing. He's clearly thinking very hard as he's writing, and again, just the relevance of what's going on today with what he wrote so long ago is beyond evident to me. And I hope that, as I continue to read even from this book and in future episodes, that people continue to sort of see those connections. There is one last thing I'd like to do. I just received this very nice call from an individual who offered a prayer over Give, Send, Go, and they called my phone and it went to voice message, but I listened to the voice message and I thought this was fantastic. And I'm just going to play the voice message, so give this a listen.
Hi, my name's Laura, and I'm on a prayer team of Give, Send, Go. I noticed your campaign, Stacy and Damien from Canada, and Sean, I just wanted to call and pray for them. So, Lord, I just lift up Stacy and Damien. Lord, I just ask for your help. Lord, I ask for them to be able to get back into the working world without having to worry about being vaccinated. I do ask for their finances to improve, and just thank you, Lord, that the option of moving did not have to happen, Lord. I just pray you would be a blessing to them, Lord, in such a way that they would know that it's you and that you intervened in their life for their good. And I ask for your blessings on Sean and his podcast, and will you bless him and all the works of his hands, I pray. And I ask for these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thank you, Sean. I hope you're having a good day. God bless you.
Great people over at Give, Send, Go. So thank you, Laura, for that phone call. I really do appreciate it. And again, the Give, Send, Go campaign has ended for Stacy and Damien. The money that was raised was approximately $500, and they received the check last week and texted me when they got it and said thanks. It was a big help with some bills and other things that needed paying, and there you go. So hopefully in the future we can get them back on too and discuss some of the things that were going on there. And of course, they always have a home here on the podcast. They're welcome to come here anytime. And of course, give us the Canadian update because we need that as well. Just because it's not being talked about in the news or it's on the old TV doesn't mean stuff isn't happening there. It most certainly is. So, ladies and gentlemen, with all of that said, thank you for listening, and I'll catch you on Friday. Take care. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.